Jumping into this painting today, we're just going to get a big brush, some orange paint, a little bit of water, and just start filling in big long brush strokes going side to side, slightly above the middle of the painting. Now that first color was orange. Might not have looked like it, but here's the red. It's just a plain red, doing a pretty big section of that right above the orange. And then above that, jumping in with some purple. So just taking a big brush, getting some orange, going slightly above the middle of the painting, really spreading out that orange side to side. Going above the orange, grabbing some red and pushing a whole lot of that in, once again going it side to side, and then at the very top hitting it with a little bit of purple. Now you're going to see down there at the bottom where we already hit it with some purple. There we go. Purple and red, just kind of grabbing it where it's mixing that purple and red on the top and using that color that's already mixed and pushing it on the bottom for the reflection of it in the water. And then the same thing here. This is that orange and red, it kind of mixed together just right above it in the water because it's a reflection, so it's the opposite top to bottom as it is bottom to top. So purple at the top, red below that, orange below that in the sky, and then at the bottom it's purple at the bottom, red above that, orange above that. And this is a little bit of pink. Here's it a little bit more clearly. As you can see, jumping in with some pink, pushing it in right at the bottom of that orange. And we're not going to cover all of that orange up, but we're going to blend this in pretty well to that orange in the top and in the bottom there in the water. And then in our empty section, that's going to be yellow and white paint mixed together. And of course, it doesn't have to be perfectly mixed. We're going to blend it up a little bit and blend it down a little bit into the other sections, just like we did with the other colors. It doesn't have to be a perfect blend. You can get all these wonderful little streaks and tones that just like to mix and pick up, and like that little bit of orange that's in that yellow now, let that kind of blend out. We can push this up as high as we want it to go, and there you can see having to wipe that off. That's just a little mistake, and those happen. Got a little bit of that darker color in that setting sun, and we didn't want that. We wanted it yellow, so just immediately wiping it off and going back with some yellow and white to tone it down, and then using that same big brush, getting it nice and flat, and using a light little touch to kind of zigzag in some of that white and yellow mixture. This is for that sun, of course, bouncing off of all of that wonderful wavy water. It's everywhere, so just blending it in through the middle where it's really light, and then pushing it out, letting it grab some of that color that's still wet and get a little bit darker on those outer edges here, and not turning everything that lighter color, streaking it around and leaving some of the darker tones from before. This here, we're jumping into a smaller brush and doing just like a little zigzag through the very middle with some plain white for that reflection for the setting sun, and these little dots are just wonderful little glimmers where that sun is bouncing right off of that water. It's just light little touches, little bitty dots of plain white paint. You can even do like little streaks or just like teeny tiny little lines in that water, and using that same rounded brush here with the white and the really little one, getting in there, making a little circle for that setting sun. This is not about the color here, this is about the layout. So just getting it the size and shape that we want that circle to be for now. If it picks up a little bit of background color, that's fine, just leave that. We'll work on that tone later on. And then using that same white paint, this actually has a little bit of yellow in it as well because we had just picked it up off of that background when we did that circle. And then this is that exact same brush. And then just fanning out little rays from that sun. Some of that little background is going to pick up here or there and kind of go into those setting sun rays, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. It kind of does that. If you look at a setting sun, you'll kind of see that happen with the reflections of all of the different light tones in the sky. As that sun cuts through it, it'll have the little sunbeams, and then it'll pick up other stuff from the colors around and push through. So if you're getting that on your painting, it's perfect. Once again, just using this smaller brush, or you could even use a flatter brush to do this, but just kind of fanning out little lines all the way around that circle, just everywhere up in the sky. We're not going to put this in the water because we've already taken care of our water, so just pushing this all the way around that circle up here in the sky, getting a little bit longer sometimes, a little bit shorter other times, grabbing some plain white if we want to, fanning it in, and then not being afraid to jump out here and get really long with some of these lines. If you want to wait until it's a little bit more dry, you can use something flat like a ruler or a book, whatever you use as a flat line to help you guide your lines to keep them a lot straighter. I like to do it while it's wet so that it will pick up a little bit of that background color as I push it out to get some of that natural change in tone that there is in like an actual sunset. But you can do it with a little flat object. Just be careful not to smudge your wet paint onto whatever you're using. And once again, getting a little bit longer sometimes. This is kind of just the same thing, just fanning it around. Not all of these little lines have to line up with the little fanned lines we started with. We can get extra little ones in between, and we can let it get a little bit lighter sometimes, a little bit more see-through once the paint isn't so wet on that brush, and just let whatever is already wet on the painting kind of push around so that we still get that general feel of the lines kind of moving throughout that background. And then just doing another little layer on that circle. This is some white. There's still a little of the yellow that's wet, but it's dry enough that putting that white right on top will really brighten it up. And then of course here's a little bit more white going into that background, especially through that middle section where it's very yellow, and we were using yellow and white before. This is some plain white through there to really get some of those rays in that section that we couldn't get as much before. And then just pushing out some plain white around the circle, just like we did the yellow and white. And now we're going to go ahead and just jump onto our land mass. This is just going to be plain black paint, using more of a flatter brush with a rounded tip, just to kind of get this fun little land shape. And the black, you can just do a little line across to start with, just to keep everything nice and balanced and even, so you don't have an angled line at the end. And then you're just going to circle out little tiny dots and circles, and get it a little bit taller sometimes, a little bit shorter other times. We're just going to go a whole bunch of little taps and circles all across that land to get your little forest that is off there in the distance where the sun is setting, and getting a little bit taller sometimes, other times getting shorter. This is all just little bitty circles. So you're just going to circle, circle, circle all the way across that land. Sometimes you can get a little bit wider on the edges, because that land is going to be a little bit, when I say wider, I mean taller, because that's going to be taller. It's going to be a little closer to you, of course, and then just perspective-wise, the stuff in the middle is always shorter and further away. And then here in the bottom, we're doing the same little circular motion with that brush for the reflection in the water, but also doing little side-to-side lines, okay, like little bitty zigzags side to side throughout those exact same circular motions up top. That'll mimic the top, but then those little side to side lines will make it coordinate with the waves we already have in our water. Reflections in the water don't need to be exactly the same as the top. They're a reflection, they get a little chaotic sometimes, but you can do what we've done here and reflect it down as low as the bush is tall. So however high up it went, it will come down that much as you go low, but just using the little side to side zigzags to get that reflection feel of it in the water. So anytime it goes up tall, you'll bring it down low, and anytime it's kind of short, you'll just barely go below that black land line that we put on at first. And then just zigzagging across, adding little extras. Sometimes it can go outside of the lines, like it can be a little bit more than what it was up top, and that's okay too, because it's a reflection, so sometimes there's extra little lines. But just taking a moment, finishing out the last few little zigzags, and that's it. It's a pretty quick little painting today. This is wonderful, it's beautiful, it's amazing. You did a great job. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week.